Thank you so much, Marc. Next, I'm going to welcome Glen. Glen Larum was born on an eastern Montana ranch just before the midway mark of the last century. He earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Montana Western and went on to become an award-winning newspaper reporter and editor in Montana, Colorado, and Texas, before becoming a spokesperson for the Texas Department of Transportation's Odessa district until retirement in 2010, when he was commended for his contributions to state and community in an official resolution of the Texas House of Representatives. His debut novel, Waltz Against the Sky, is set in West Texas in the 1970s, somewhere between Odessa-Midland and the Rio Grande. Please welcome Glen.
Well, you know, Texas is a big state, and Marc certainly proves it. His Texas is a far different Texas than the Texas that Waltz Against the Sky looks at. Those are the big people. They talk about million-dollar settlements. These people in this book, Waltz Against the Sky, they got here hitchhiking, riding the rails, taking the bus, just by accident. The story of how they got here and what happened afterwards is the stuff of this book. This is a Reader's Digest condensed version of excerpts from Waltz Against the Sky. In case you brought your book along, I may skip a paragraph or two. The book itself is soaked in detail because I wanted to make the point that even the tiniest detail is important. Life can hinge on any one of those. This is from the prologue. In the hours after midnight, Indian Springs suddenly appears to weary travelers as a glowing galaxy, strewn in the south to north arc across the desolate corner of the Chihuahuan Desert. Overhead, real stars are mere pinpricks of light fixed above that faint glittering shimmer. For all its desolation, though, Indian Springs is the center of a miniature universe, the hub of 5 highways intersecting each other on the way to and from somewhere and nowhere. Another of those intersections where people in motion stop, rush on, or collide. For most, it's just a moment in passing. For a few, it's a happy circumstance, a beginning. For the lucky ones, a happy ending. For the unlucky ones, an unhappy ending. And for the truly unfortunate, this is a story about some of those people. Setting the stage, it had been the only jailbreak in 25 years that Leo Blunt had been the sheriff, and shouldn't even count because it happened at the old jail where the cell doors were usually left unlocked, especially for the regulars. Sober them up, send them on their way. That was Blunt's way. Nobody had ever been stupid enough to break out of jail when they weren't locked in. Chief Deputy Matt Ridgway guessed that the sheriff had walked the intoxicated ranch hand across the alley to the old jail, put him to bed in the cell just across from the kitchen, and told him to sleep it off. No point in trying to find room in the new jail. Besides, Blunt and Joe Dornick were old friends. They went way back. Sheriff Leo Blunt, who was trying to keep his problems to a minimum, hadn't counted on Dornick being any kind of a problem. Yeah, he was a regular among the town's winter boozers, and he'd spent more nights in jail than he had in any motel. He was so at home here that he was cleaning up a spill on the cement floor of the kitchen when Blunt walked in for his morning coffee. "Watch it, Leo. It's wet. Damn it," Dornick grumbled, waving the business end of a mop. Surprised, Blunt tried to take a quick step back. "Hey," he bleated as his feet went out from under him. When he came to, he was lying face down on the floor. He twisted to look up and saw Dornick on his knees beside him, a revolver in his hand. His weapon. What the hell? He'd known Dornick for 30 years. He'd worked roundups with him, for God's sake. They were friends of a sort. That was his last thought as the barrel of the pistol came down hard. When he regained consciousness, he was lying on the cool, damp floor, his hands trussed tightly behind him. At the sound of something popping and scraping, he turned to see his wife, Bertie, slowly scooting a chair toward him. She's tied to it, he realized, with her own damn clothesline. He saw she was gagged. She stopped next to him and wrestled with the chair. "Don't!" he bellowed. "Don't!" She tumbled over on top of him, the high back of the chair crashing down on the back of his head. Pinwheels of light exploded. When he came to a third time, he was on the sofa in their small living quarters, just off the jail. He looked up at a room crowded with hazy figures, low voices talking at great distance. With some difficulty, he sorted out the crowd. There was Bertie, a couple of his deputies, his office clerk, daytime jailer, and old Doc Malloy, who was standing over him. Blunt tried to move. "Don't try to get up just yet," Malloy said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "How bad is it?" he asked. "Now, you've had worse, Leo, but there's a pretty good gash on the back of your head." Blunt turned, straining to look at his wife. "Bertie's okay. He didn't hurt her," Malloy assured him, nodding in her direction. "She told us most of what happened." Figures, she's never had a thought go through her head that didn't come out her mouth. He grimaced. "And Joe?" he asked plaintively. Malloy heard a voice behind him utter a single word. He repeated it for the sheriff's benefit. "Gone." "I'll never hear the end of this," Blunt thought. And then the scene shifts. It's later. Dornick has been recaptured. And now he's been taken to the courtroom. Judge Robert Whitcomb could feel his blood pressure rising as the two deputies walked their prisoner to the front of his courtroom. Each had a hand tucked into one of Dornick's armpits, keeping him upright as he shuffled forward. Bob Whitcomb was the ultimate local boy made good, son of a county rancher who knew most of his residents by name and most of the rest by sight. He'd known the Box 8 cowboy for a long time, and this sight was a new one. The man had a split lower lip, black eye, and an angry purple bruise running the length of his right jaw. The judge winced as the prisoner gingerly stepped toward him. Dornick was in obvious pain as he looked up. "Hello, Bob," he finally said, wobbling slightly between the two deputies. Whitcomb just nodded. He looked at Ridgway, then at Bruce. Both returned his look with an in-your-face stoicism. "What happened here?" Whitcomb asked. "You'd have to ask Sheriff Blunt about that," Ridgway spoke up. "He's out of pocket right now, though." As Dornick leaned into him, he put a hand up to steady him. "Well, when he gets time," Whitcomb said, "you tell him that I would like to talk to him." Ridgway cleared his throat to speak, but fell silent as just Bruce, the senior deputy, answered for both of them. "When he gets back, we will, Your Honor." Whitcomb glowered at him, then looked away out across the courtroom. His gaze stopped to take in the newspaper reporter sitting in the second row, writing furiously in his notebook. Evan Blaine. Whitcomb had seen his byline in the dispatch. Some of it pretty good. He wondered if Blaine, who was new in town, had understood the meaning of the exchange between him and the deputies. He does if he has a brain, he thought. When Blaine looked up to see himself under the judge's scrutiny, he stopped scribbling. Whitcomb started to say something, thought the better of it, and instead beckoned the district attorney to approach the bench. The two of them kept their voices low as they worked out a courtroom calendar for Dornick's expected hearing and trial dates on the two charges of assault, a third on escaping jail. And when they finished, the DA stepped back out of the line of fire. "You take him back." Whitcomb raised his voice to address Ridgway and Bruce. "I'll see he gets a lawyer. You two better see he gets to see a doctor." "You bet, Your Honor," the older deputy replied. Whitcomb stood, shook his head wearily, and waved his hand at the trio. "Court adjourned," he said. He looked out at the reporter who was studying him, nodded toward the doorway, and walked toward it, pausing once to glance back to see if Blaine had gotten the message. Settling into his office chair, the judge took off his glasses and rubbed his eyelids with the tips of his fingers. "This has got to stop," he thought. "They've crossed the line over there." He mentally ran the list of battered prisoners. There had been Anaya's teenage kid, the prisoner transferred from the Sunlight Hospital, the hitchhiker from back east. Now Dornick, and who knows who else. That's probably just the tip of the iceberg. He heard the knock and opened his eyes to see the reporter standing in the doorway. "Come in," he gestured toward the sofa. "You want a Coke or something?" Blaine shook his head. "You understand what it was you saw out there?" Whitcomb asked. "Well, near as I could see, Blaine began cautiously. Was that guy had the crap beat out of him? How did that happen? Whitcomb pursed his lips. I'd be very careful about pursuing that line of questioning, he cautioned. Better you stick to the facts of the case. I assure you, Judge, I stick to the facts. Blaine fixed him with a deliberate stare. I'm a reporter. That's what I do. Okay, you're a reporter. And you know what off the record means? Yeah, I guess. What do you think it means? It means you're going to tell me something, but I can't print it. Blaine closed his notebook. At least not now. That's about the size of it, the judge said. You print it, I'll put you in jail. And I can tell you right now, that's not a place you want to be. Not in this town. He now had Blaine's complete attention. Whitcomb leaned back. I've got some people investigating certain law enforcement personnel here in Paisano County related to their official duties. And if they find there's anything to it, I'll be the first to let the public know, not some reporter from wherever it is you're from. Montana, Blaine said reflexively. Whitcomb leaned forward as if sharing a confidence. You start poking around in this, son, you'll just make it all the harder. He paused. You understand what I'm saying? Blaine nodded. I do, he said simply. Okay, then I guess we understand each other. I think so, Blaine said. It's pretty much the same the world around. You give some people a badge and a gun, they think they can get away with anything. Whitcomb snorted. Sometimes they can't, he said, but things aren't always what they seem. He paused. And one other thing, we've never had this conversation. He looked up to see the district clerk walking in, carrying a file folder. Excuse me, she said, halting as she saw Blaine. The door was open. I didn't realize. It's okay, Whitcomb interrupted, wagging his fingers. Sheila, this is Evan Blaine, the new reporter at the Dispatch. Evan, Sheila Buchanan, the district clerk. Blaine moved a half step, extended his hand. She took it. Her grip firm, eyes shining an electric green, and that sweep of red hair glistening against the bright sunlit backdrop of the window frame behind her. He was just leaving, Whitcomb said, finally breaking into an awkward silence. Embarrassed, Blaine dropped her hand and backed away. Yeah, well, he said, it's nice meeting you, Mrs. Buchanan. She smiled and nodded, said, you too, and then turned to the judge. Cute, she mouthed silently. Whitcomb swallowed a grin as Blaine went out the door.